Welcome to How to Deal When the Shit Gets Real podcast. I'm Marietta.
And I'm Connie. And today we are here with Maria Pendolino. So Maria, how do you deal when the shit gets real?
I don't. I just crawl into a hole made of blankets and hope for the best. How's that?
Beautiful.
Are they fuzzy blankets?
That's what we all want to do.
Absolutely. Have you ever seen the women who sell like minky fuzzy blankets on Facebook and like Facebook live sales?
No.
I feel like this is a very like niche culty thing. My sister-in-law discovered it and dragged me into it, but there's this like pack of women in Utah who make these like super, super, super soft blankets, and supposedly they're handmade by moms and grandmas, which might be like code for cults or something, allegedly, who knows. But they created that kind of same scarcity mindset that the people who sold LuLaRoe for a long time did. So there's like only one of everything. So they would go on these Facebook lives and like hold up these blankets and be like, you know, if you want it, you know, comment like mine number 47 or something. And my sister-in-law got me totally addicted to it because it combined two of my favorite things, which is online shopping, three of my favorite things: online shopping, instant gratification, and competition.
Oh, yeah.
So yes, my place where I go when the shit gets real is a pile of blankets that I obtained in a dark period of my life when I was buying competitive blankets on Facebook Live. And now I have a great blanket collection, but after a while, like another box would come and my husband would be like, another blanket.
I am really intrigued
can
by
never
this
have too
now.
many.
Like, does this still exist? Do I need to like go get on Facebook Live and find blankets? Like, I'm very intrigued right now.
I don't even remember the name of the company, but if it comes to me, or if I find a PayPal receipt in the depths of my Gmail, I will let you know, and then you can find out if they're still doing their live sales.
I'm just very intrigued. I mean, no pressure, but that was very intriguing to me. I mean, I thought indies were great.
Dragged me into that because that sounds really fun.
It's just like
it's something that's so like I always want another blanket. I can never have too many blankets.
And like truly, like they are the softest blankets, and some of them are quite heavy duty. Like they're not certified as like weighted blankets or, you know, anxiety blankets or something. But I call one of them, I have one that's kind of like almost like a full size bed comforter size. And I call it my thunder shirt, like a dog. So like if I'm having like a rough night, I'm like to my husband, can you please get my thunder shirt? And he'll like throw that blanket on top of our bed comforter too. So
I love it.
I'll hook you up. I know people.
That's
great.
Awesome. Really, that's honestly really awesome. And now I'm gonna have to go down a blanket rabbit hole later. But anyway, so you are a voice actor.
Yes.
How did you become a voice actor?
Yeah, so I was one of those very annoying children who like begged their parents to take them to auditions. My parents are like the opposite of stage parents. Instead of like encouraging me, they were like, we have to drive you where, when, how much does it cost? But I like auditioned for a ton of productions of like The Sound of Music and other community theater things. I was very much like addicted to Broadway, and like, thank God social media didn't exist when I was a child, because it could have gone one of two ways. I could have ended up like making $1 gazillion like Jojo Siwa, or I could have ended up being like one of those like very, very sad people who are uploading videos that are like not well shot and they only have like one view, and like the person just is like not in on their own joke. So it could have gone one of two ways, I think. But I loved acting. I loved performing. I did it in high school. I did it in college. And after I graduated from college, I moved to New York, and I was kind of pursuing being an actor alongside working full time. I kind of had it in my head, like being a working actor is really, really hard. And it is, like, no question. And I was like, I should get a job and I should make money and I should be an actor also. And I did that for many years and pursued it the best that I could. And then when the financial crisis happened from 2008 to 2010, I was sitting in like a cubicle graveyard, like waiting to be laid off. And I said, you know what, this is just not what I want to do. So it was very much like a quarter life crisis. Quit my job, cashed in my 401k, and used it to like jumpstart a full-time acting career. Like, what would it look like if I tried to do this full time? And I was moderately successful. I booked some roles in TV and film. I was on Lifetime's drama show Army Wives on a few episodes. I did an episode of Nat Geo's Locked Up Abroad, where I was like the reenactment actor, like telling the story of someone who tried to smuggle drugs, which was really cool. All expenses paid trip to Colombia, the country. So I was having a little bit of success, doing really well. And I wanted to look into like trying to do commercials. Like I knew people who did commercials could make a lot of money. It's kind of like just known that that's a way to make money because they are plastering your face across ads with their products. So you get paid for that. And that's kind of how I found voiceover. I'm a fat person, so I didn't think, I wasn't going to be like selling makeup at that time in the early 2000s. They've opened up a little bit more in what commercials look like. But I was like, voiceover, I've got the face for voiceover. Absolutely. Please take me there. And what was interesting is I really loved it. It really took advantage of all the vocal training and acting training that I had been doing my entire life. And I had worked in industry, like in corporate America for several years. So being able to make things that are very corporate-y and buzzwordy and jargon heavy sound natural, that came really easy to me. And at the same time that like this was kind of taking off, my body was like, hey, how are you? We're no longer interested in functioning correctly. I was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis when I was 22, and it just kind of got worse and worse. And then it just got it to this friction point where like, I'm not going to be able to stand on set for 18 hours a day if I booked a movie or a TV role. I'm not going to do 8 shows a week if I book a professional theater role. I can't go to a dance call right now. Like, that's not happening. But voiceover was great because it was like you walk into the studio and you're like, hi, can I have a stool? And they're like, here you go. It was like the right place, the right time. I liked it. I was doing well at it. And then I kind of pushed it up to the forefront and said, I'm going to pursue voiceover acting, voice acting as the primary way that I'm going to make my living as an actor. And it has worked out really, really well. I've been a working actor from home, which sounds so weird, but I am a working actor from home for the last 10 years. I've been doing voiceover now for almost 15 years. But yeah, for the last 10, it's been essentially from my own home studio.
That's awesome.
So how does it work? Do you go and like pick out what you want to do? Do they give you like, this is what you're doing this week? How does your voice?
So there's a few different ways that I get work. So I have agents and managers that represent me and my career. And those folks are based in major cities like New York, LA, Chicago, Austin, places like that. So those folks are communicating with casting directors for commercials, animation, video games, corporate stuff. They're talking to ad agencies. They're talking to people who might need a voice. So those people who represent me present me basically every day with job opportunities, auditions. So I'm essentially like applying for jobs like hundreds of times per week, really. So they'll send out auditions and it'll just say like, we're looking for a female voice that's roughly this age. Here's kind of the vibe of what we're trying to do. Here's maybe a celebrity that we really like that of course we cannot afford. So like their vibe, their energy. And so then I submit auditions. I basically record anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute of myself reading their sample script. I email that to my agent or manager, and then they send those on to the clients. I also have a membership on an online casting site, which is essentially like Indeed, but just for voiceover. So I pay the membership to have a profile there and to be able to communicate with people who are looking. So people can reach out to me and say, hey, I've listened to your demos. Are you available? Do you want to audition for my project? And then they also have like a project board where people can post things that they're looking for. So I can like go on and cherry pick the same way you could go to like Indeed or LinkedIn and look at jobs that are open. I can do that and say, that matches my voice. That budget looks good, whatever. So I can choose things that way. And then just from doing the work over the last 15 years, I've built up a pretty nice client list as a kind of small business owner. And I have people who kind of just walk into my email and say like, hey, Maria, we have this script that we think your voice would be great for. We need it back by Thursday. Our budget is $500. Are you free to do it? So those are kind of like the 3 main pathways of people finding me. And then people find me on social. People find my website. I've done a lot of work to try and help Google bring people to me who are looking for me. So that's always great to get kind of like cold inquiries, the same way that like someone would like Google, like, where's the best place to get a cupcake and then walk into a bakery. So people might Google like, how do I hire a female voice actor? And I'm hoping that like my website will come up and they can kind of walk into my digital door.
That's awesome.
So what has been one of your favorite projects that you've done? I'm sure you've done tons, but if you had to pick one.
I have a couple. So 2 football seasons ago, I got to do the opening promo packages for 2 Monday Night Football nights. And I live in Buffalo. I grew up in Buffalo, so football runs very deep in our veins here. And that was one of those things, like, when it's difficult to explain to people what you do for a living, like what like I actually do every day, being able to like text like second cousins and be like, "Hey, watch Monday Night Football tonight. You will hear my voice." That was like a great way for people to be able to connect the dots of like, "Oh, Maria sits in her studio and she records audio, and then someone takes it and turns it into this. And 26 million people are watching it right now." So that was kind of a cool like feather in the cap moment. Like this is an event, a weekly event, a brand that people recognize, and I can say, "Hey, Monday Night Football used my voice." That was really cool.
That's very cool.
Other thing that I love is I have been contacted several times by students who are studying animation, and they go to like art and design colleges, and they're learning how to be the 2D or 3D animators of the future who are going to be the next people working on a Pixar movie or a DreamWorks movie. And a lot of times they produce little shorts as their junior project or their senior thesis, and they reach out and they hire voice actors. Sometimes they ask if you'll do it for free. Sometimes they'll say like, "Hey, I have $50. Would you like to voice a character?" And I just love working on that because I get an amazing piece for my portfolio because these kids are like working their tails off to put the best effort into it. And it's also just really cool to like collaborate with these people who are going to be in 10 years the person that I might be getting a job from anyway. So I worked with some students from the Ringling College of Art and Design. They made a 3-minute short about like, it was like a film noir at a Build-A-Bear kind of thing. It was really, really
hilarious.
Funny. And then I also worked with a group of students from a university in Costa Rica. They were making like what would happen if like a demon, like a Medusa demon, ran like a hair salon and spa. So I played like the demon Medusa who's like welcoming you to her spooky spa. So that's a couple examples of just things that I've really been able to like sink my teeth into.
That
sounds like so much fun. Yeah. Super fun.
Yeah, it's a wild way to make a living. I sit in a padded box by myself all day, and I'm an extrovert, so that's hard. And I just talk to myself. I'm talking to these padded walls. And sometimes I have, in my headphones, like sometimes I have people directing me. So they're listening and saying like, "Hey, that was great. Could we try it this way? Could we try it that way?" And then sometimes I'm just recording by myself and I'm just kind of listening to myself. Did I make a mistake? Did I say that correctly? Is that what they wanted? So I'm kind of like self-directing, self-judging as I go. And then the rest of the time I'm just sending emails. It's just a lot of emails.
Do you do books?
I have done some audiobooks. I will say that it is an enormous amount of labor for a much smaller proportion of compensation, just the way that audiobooks are kind of rated for pay. So I'll give you an example. It is possible, and this might blow people's mind, but like it is possible to do like a 30-second commercial for a brand. And you might be in a session for anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, recording multiple takes as they're like choosing the takes, picking the music, whatever. So you're physically working for 2 to 4 hours. If that commercial is for the kind of brand that is like a top 10 advertiser, so your State Farms, your Geicos, your McDonald's, like the people who are every commercial break. If it's for one of those brands and it's like a commercial that's going to run for a while, like you can make tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars as a commercial actor. These jobs are very competitive. They're very hard to book, but like the compensation is like very strong for the fact that they're using your voice over and over and over again. So again, remember, you worked for 2 to 4 hours. A full-length audiobook is about 10 hours, let's say. To get those 10 hours, it will take you a ratio of 3 to 1 in the studio. So for one finished hour that's ready for a listener to enjoy, it's going to take you 3 hours to record it because you're recording, you're stopping, you're breathing, you're making mistakes, you're drinking water, whatever. So it's going to take you 30 hours in the booth to eventually have what is completed as a 10-hour audiobook. And the union scale for audiobooks right now is like $225 for a finished hour. So you're not paid for the working hours, you're paid for the finished hours. So you're going to spend 30 hours recording a book, and your net pay is going to be about $2,200. And when you like do the math, it comes out to like not that great of an hourly wage. So I think it's hard to get excited about the compensation structure in audiobooks if you are lucky enough to book commercials. That being said, there are people that I know in my industry who love doing audiobooks. They just love it. And I think if you love it, great. I do not love it. It is a lot of time in the booth. And I've enjoyed the books that I've worked on. I've worked on many like 2, 3, and 4 hour books, and I find that to be a lot more palatable. And I especially like working on books that I find interesting. I just did an audiobook called Against Techno-Ableism, which is about kind of the intersection of technology and disability, which is really interesting to me. And they were, the publisher was really passionate about having a disabled voice actor voice the book, which I really appreciate them going that far for the authenticity. So I decided to do it. And there were times when I was in the booth where I was like, why did I decide to do this? But the book turned out great and the author's awesome. And like, that was a great project. But yeah, so that's my little story for you about audiobooks.
No, I appreciate you breaking that down, especially as somebody like as an indie author, I would love to do audiobooks, but for me, because I also am not, Colleen Hoover, $2,200 is a lot for me. But I also do understand that for how much time y'all have to put into it, it's not a lot for you either. So there's this like weird middle road when you're like, I really want to give them what they would deserve, but I'm really broke.
Yeah, there is, for indie authors, there is another road. If you do the audiobook through Audible's Audiobook Creation Exchange, ACX, you as an independent author can post the job, like post a couple pages of your book as a royalty share book, which means the narrator will record it essentially for free and take a flyer on you and say, hey, your book sounds interesting. I think you might sell some, which is awesome. So then when it's completed, it goes up on Audible and the other distribution platforms. Amazon, I think, takes 60% right off the top. And then the remaining 40% is divided between the author and the narrator. So if the author and the narrator are both really committed to promoting it and the book is well written and well edited, I know people who have done royalty share deals with authors, and both of them have made lots of money by getting the book sold a lot. So that's a way for an independent author to have it professionally narrated, professionally performed, and the voice actor gets to participate in the profit with you. So if you wrote a good book and people like it, you get half of the share that Amazon didn't take, and then the narrator gets the other half for essentially doing the work for free on spec, saying, I hope we sell some.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, you could find some talented people that way. I know a lot of people who like to cut their teeth on the royalty share opportunities. So check it out. It's acx.com.
Good to know. So you touched briefly that you are disabled. So if you don't mind sharing, what is your disability and how have you found ways to navigate that?
Yeah, so psoriatic arthritis is an autoimmune condition. Essentially what happens is your immune system gets confused and starts attacking your healthy joints. So it looks at your knee joints or your elbow joints or your hip joints, and it says, oh no, an intruder alert, and starts attacking it the way that it attacks disease and pathogens and other things like that. So as it's kind of snacking on your joints, you get pain, inflammation, and then the resulting problem from psoriatic arthritis is then you're left with osteoarthritis. So the type of arthritis that happens to people as they age or from overuse of joints or sports injuries or stuff. So people think of arthritis as like, old people in the Jeopardy commercials, like rubbing their hands and whatever. And that's what happens kind of at the end. So basically, whereas a normal person is not going to get to that place with their joints until they're 50s, 60s, or 70s, it happened to me by 28. So by 28, my knees were toast and really needed to be replaced. So that stinks. It is, I think it's a really difficult disability to understand because it looks different in different people. I have kind of the most prevalence of the arthritis in my lower extremities. So I walk really strangely. My left leg, since I had my knees replaced, my left leg never really regained the full range of motion from like before my disability started. So the knee replacement made it much, much better than it had been, but it's still not 100%, normal or perfect. So I walk a little off kilter, and I use mobility devices depending on the situation. So I have like a walker or rollator, I have a mobility scooter, I have a wheelchair, and I choose like the right thing for the right situation. And
Mm-hmm.
I think people have such a binary view of disability. You are either like fully paralyzed spine injury or you're fine.
Yes.
So like people lose their minds with ambulatory wheelchair users, people who are able to walk and stand, but choose to use a mobility device for comfort, for ease, for whatever. But like TikTok and Instagram is filled with people who have disabilities similar to mine or use devices similar to mine getting accosted by people for using disabled
Yes.
parking places, using elevators, getting up out of their wheelchair and having people scream at them that they're faking. So I think honestly, one of the hardest things with having a disability is like other people, and just like constantly having to justify your need for access or services and accessibility, or just like people being friggin' weird. Like there was one time that I was just kind of like limping my way into Target, like you do, to spend $200 on throw pillows that you don't need. And this woman just walked up to me and she's like, "Oh, what happened?" And I'm like, "I don't know, Sheila. I don't think the Target parking lot is HIPAA, secured here. I don't want to give you like my whole health history." It's like, "What do you want me to say,
Hi.
man? My leg doesn't work. Like, do yours work? Great for you. I'm gonna go get my pillows." So yeah, hell is other people. But it's just, and also like obviously our healthcare system in the United States is just an absolute disaster to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really appreciative to be a member of the disabled community and to have the community and people to like talk with and vent with and all of that kind of stuff. And it's also just hard being a young person who acquires a disability later in life, from here up, you'd never know, right? But like if I stood up and started walking, you'd be like, something has happened. So it's strange having an identity of being like a youthful, vibrant person who wants to like go out and do things. But like the way that people frame disability is like, you should stay in your house and you can't do fun things because you're broken and you're disabled or whatever. We also have in our
Yeah.
country such draconian policies around disabled people being able to earn money if they are on like SSI and support. It's still legal in most states to pay disabled people less than their non-disabled counterparts. So we just have lots and lots of systemic bias and systemic history that has excluded disabled folks from just like being around, I think. So yeah.
Absolutely. My
Yeah.
brother actually yeah.
It's
How
still
long has
recent.
it been, Rihanna? It's
It's still
still
recent.
recent,
It'll
but
be
he had a
3 years in August. So, I mean, it's just like 2 and a
yeah,
half, I guess that would make it.
and he's completely disabled. He's in a wheelchair. He had a spinal cord injury, and his wife is now all about it. Like she will tell me like random stuff, and I'll be like, no freaking way. Like she told me that certain buildings that are like old and historical, they don't have to do anything.
Yeah,
They are
they get grandfathered
grandfathered
in.
in. And she's like, how is that possible? Like, she is always like constantly the disability, like social warrior justice, because she hates the fact that if she's going somewhere with her husband and she can get in somewhere easily and he can't, she's like, how is this fair?
Yeah.
They even had, like the United Center in Chicago.
Mhm.
They actually got them to give them new tickets because they were given 2 tickets to go see the Blackhawks. They were not prepared for a person in a wheelchair, so they had no place. Like they were like, I don't know what to do. Basically, is my understanding of it. So they ended up. She blasted them on social media and ended up getting new tickets for like the proper seat because they had to seat them one whole like level up. They were supposed to be in the 200s and they sat them in the 300s because they didn't know he had a disability that included a wheelchair.
Yeah, those large event centers have so few accessible zones. Like when you look at these places that have 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 seats, and then they'll be like, we have room for 12 wheelchairs. And it's like,
Yeah,
well, like
it's
what
insane.
happens if the 12 wheelchair spots are taken? You're shit out of luck. That's what happens. And it's awful. It's just awful.
It is.
Jim Lebrecht, who's a really great documentary film director who's also disabled, he directed and produced the documentary Crip Camp, which was about a camp that was, I think it was in upstate New York, but specifically for disabled kids where they could just be themselves around other disabled kids, not feel special, just feel normal around people like them. It was produced by the Obamas and it got nominated for an Oscar, I believe. And he, along with an organization called the 1 in 4 Coalition, which is advocating for more disabled representation in Hollywood, they started a Build the Ramp campaign because award shows don't have ramps. They just have stairs, which everyone friggin' trips on anyway. Here's the thing. Everyone can walk up a ramp. Able-bodied people and disabled people can get up a ramp. Stairs, only able-bodied people. So when it comes to things like that, it's the disabled people get shoved in the side with like the catering people because they're like, well, in order for you to be on the stage, that means you have to go in the stage door, which is down this back dark alley. And then you're just going to have to sit there for like 2 hours and find out if you actually won so that you can roll on stage. It's just like such a thing. And it doesn't need to be a thing. It shouldn't be a thing.
No,
It's
it
just
definitely should not be a thing.
people don't think about it. And I think that's the biggest problem, right? A lot
Yeah,
of
you're right. Because if it doesn't affect us individually,
you
we
don't think
don't
about
think
it.
about it.
If you've never been with someone like your brother and sister-in-law, if you've never been with someone and seen that like they cannot get in because it's just stairs, or they cannot get in because it's not wide enough for a mobility device or whatever. If you've not had that one-to-one person experience, then that's going to be your bias. Your bias is always going to give you that blind spot to not be thinking about it. That's why a lot of activists are asking people when we're thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion to add the A to the end of that acronym, DEIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And there's also just a ton of intersectionality. There's a lot of disabled people who are also people of color. There are a lot of disabled people who are living below the federal poverty line. So there's a lot of intersectionality of the different types of things that people are trying to advocate for, and they're just forgetting disabled people entirely. So that's one of the things that I'm really proactive in speaking up about. And it's a new identity for me. I was not a disabled activist 10 years ago. I was trying to hide it. I was trying to hide it the best that I could because I really did not know what it was going to do to my career. And I walked into a casting once for an off-Broadway play, and I was so jazzed about it. It was such a great role. I had memorized my lines. My roommate had helped me. It was a casting director I really liked. And I was so ready to go in there and just give like a friggin' awesome audition. And I walked in and the casting director was like, oh, are you limping? And I was like, oh, God, yeah, yeah. I was like, oh, it's raining today in New York City and my knee hurts. You know, what am I going to say? Yeah, I have a friggin' disability and I might not be able to do this play, but I'm trying really hard. But I recognize that like I was essentially able to build my voice acting career unfettered. You know, my disability didn't prevent me from being able to grow my career. So now that I've built a career and I've established myself as a presence within our industry, and you know, I've started speaking more at conferences or presenting, and people look at me as a person who has access, has information, I'm getting a lot louder about it. Someone brought up to me that they had reached out to a conference about like finding out if they had like hearing assisted devices like the loop systems for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. And, you know, she didn't get the answer that she wanted. And I was like, I'm going to take this on. I'm going to see if I can help people understand that they need to be thinking about this earlier than a couple of weeks before the conference. You know,
Yeah.
making sure that the conference hotel that you're choosing has enough accessible rooms for people who might need that. Making sure that if you're going to have people on a panel and they've created those like, you know, kind of temporary stage things that they put in ballrooms and stuff, what if you invite someone like me to be on that panel? How am I getting up there? And people just don't think about it until it's too late. And then it's like, oh, we
Yeah.
Oh
tried.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be louder. I'm just trying to be louder and make a ruckus about it.
That's one thing that really blew my mind, especially like when Mitch did get hurt, Connie's brother. That doorways are literally like minimally not wide enough, like inches. Like, why don't we just make all the doorways wide enough? Like, why isn't that just a thing? Like, it's not like it's a huge amount. It's not like it's a foot
Yes.
or 2 feet. Like,
You're like,
it's
oh, you're
little,
talking about an inch?
a
Yeah.
little tiny amount. Why don't we just make doors wider? Like,
Yeah,
just make that the standard.
the answer to all of your questions is money. That's what it all comes down to. It comes down to money, it comes down to cost, it comes down to time, it comes down to standardization. But there's a beautiful design principle called universal design, and you find a lot of it in Europe. Europe is much further along than the United States in a lot of
Oh,
ways
yeah.
as it pertains to accessibility of public spaces, things like public transit and other types of public gathering spaces. But universal design basically goes back to what I was saying about the ramp. Make the doorway wide enough for everyone to be able to get through.
Right.
Make the entrances flat for everyone to be able to walk. And then
Yeah, we
to your
have
point,
the
Connie, about
information
like
now.
the historical buildings getting grandfathered in. There are some buildings and hotels in London that have done really, really elegant solutions with these like wheelchair lifts that are essentially like hidden into the stairs. And like you just push a
That's
button and the
awesome.
stairs like come out, flatten, you can roll your wheelchair onto it, then you get lifted up, and they still get their nice historical facade. They still get their nice marble stairs, but there's like a beautiful wheelchair lift like in there ready to be used. And you don't have to call someone to use it. That's the other thing. Like a lot of places have these like
Yes.
janky lifts added onto something, but then they're locked
Oh
and
my
it's
God.
like, please call for assistance. And it's like, who am I going to
Yeah.
call? Like the
Well, that's
And
what I'm
this
talking
happened a
about
lot.
manager
too.
who's like definitely not answering the phone in the back. Like, what is this? This is not accessibility if you locked it.
Going forward, like when we're building new buildings, why don't we just make the doors wider? Like, we don't even, like, we should be doing that just going forward.
Because there wasn't a disabled person at the table reminding the people who were making the decisions that if they just added 2 inches, they're not going to get hit with a lawsuit in 2 years.
Exactly.
We need more. You need more disabled people in front of the camera, behind the camera, at the table, next to the table, leading the table,
Mhm.
all of that.
It's actually funny. We went to a restaurant with my dad, and it was not like they had like random stairs inside that like go up to the main dining room, and there's like you just said like a janky lift, and so it was locked, and they asked for assistance, and it was like a young teenager, and they almost shut the door of the lift on my brother's foot. I thought Sarah was going to have a hemorrhoid, and then Mitchell couldn't feel it, so he was just like, "What?"
Yeah, my husband and I, not this previous year, but the year before, we went to our polling place, and our polling place was in a church, and the church is like an old church that's had kind of like a newer building like attached to it. And you think the voting would be in the newer part of the building. No, why do that? The voting was in like the vestibule of the church, and the 2 doors to the church are these gigantic wooden doors, and they had one of the doors locked. So you opened one gigantic wooden door, and it was like that wide.
Oh my
So we like
God.
said to the person, like, can you please open the other door so that I can get in with my mobility device? And literally 15 minutes later, they're like, we have to call one of the priests because we don't have the key. So you
Oh
can
Oh my
bet your sweet
God.
bippy I reported that to my local election commission as a non-accessible voting space because all voting places are supposed to be accessible. And again, if they had put it in the new part of the church down in the basement, we would have been fine. But it's just like, again,
Yep.
like we need to think, folks. We need to think this through. The priest can't have the keys and then not be there.
I
Yeah,
mean, kind
really.
of ironic that the priest has the keys, but I'm not going to go down that road.
Truly, truly.
So will you have to have more like joint surgeries and replacements?
Probably. I think one of the biggest challenges that I had when my knees like really kicked the bucket is that I was going on like a tour of surgeons, like trying to find someone who would help me out. And like several of the folks that I met with were like, I would never do a knee replacement surgery on a 30-year-old. I would never, you're too young for this. And I was like, I can't walk. please replace my knees. And I was like, if I need another one, I'll deal with that when I'm 55, along with everyone else. So the lifespan of an artificial joint is probably about 20 to 25 years.
Yeah.
So I will likely need another replacement or just choose to move to like fully non-ambulatory and just using devices. But at that point, who knows what the future might hold? Artificial intelligence, hovercrafts, maybe we'll be flying by then.
Right?
I've
Yeah. Well,
lost
and artificial knees and stuff have already come really far. Like
They
when our
really
aunt
have. Oh,
got an
absolutely.
artificial hip, it used to be 10 years that they
Yeah.
said it would last.
Yeah, no,
So
they've come a long, long way.
they have.
I have probably 10 to 15 degrees of flexibility and range loss in my arms and my elbows. It doesn't really affect me too much right now. Like I can still do most things, and then I supplement with like occupational therapy aids. If I can't, like I use like a sock aid to help me put on socks. I have a toileting aid that helps you wipe your ass if you can't quite get your arm in the right place. So there's a lot of like things that you can use to extend like your flexibility, extend your range of motion. So I don't know if I would ever need like an elbow replacement. I guess it's possible if I like continue to lose it. The goal, of course, is to try and keep your inflammation as low as possible so that the arthritis is not actively eating your joints. And there are several pharmaceuticals that I audition for on a daily basis in all the commercials. It's like side effects may include all of these things. So yeah, the goal is to try and keep the arthritis at bay as best as possible, whether that's an anti-inflammatory diet, a pharmaceutical, trying to figure out like where the root cause of your inflammation is, all of that stuff, which I do with a team of doctors that help me. But
How
yeah,
are
I
your
think
hips? Are
my
your
hips
hips
are
bad?
okay from an arthritis perspective, but they are feeling it from me being off kilter. So because I walk strangely, it just throws the rest of your
Makes
body
sense.
out of alignment. So like the left side is like not working right. So then the right hip hurts and the left back hurts and my sacrum is like,
Yeah.
I
You're
go to the
leaning,
chiropractor a lot. Yeah,
all the things. Yeah.
exactly.
I love that. That's so funny. Like just like the way that you described it was kind of like a bouncy song or something.
Follow the ball. Here we go. The hip is bad
Yes,
and the left leg
exactly.
doesn't work. La 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 la. Yeah. Just right
Exactly.
stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, that's going to be with me for the rest of the night. So what are your dreams of the future, and what advice can you give to like other people that might be dealing with mobility issues, or just advice that you maybe just want to give in general?
Yeah, for sure. My like North Star bucket list, like could die tomorrow if it happened, is I would desperately love to be a singing villain. I grew up loving Ursula the Sea Witch, not Ariel from The Little Mermaid.
Yes.
Ursula is she's my homegirl. You can't
Yeah.
you can't really see it, but like to the other side of this, I have a bookcase where I have all sorts of Ursula paraphernalia. I have like a Funko Pop Ursula and a stuffed one and a Squishmallow and all sorts of stuff. She's my homegirl. So if I ever got the opportunity to like create the voice and sing as an evil Disney-esque children's villain, like that would be bucket list for me. Otherwise I just want to keep working as long as possible. I really love what I do. I love being an actor. I love being able to support myself as an actor. For me, when I was growing up and wanted to be an actor, I always thought of success as being like being able to provide for yourself just from acting, not having to have 85 side jobs, being a server, being a teacher, being a substitute teacher, driving Uber, whatever. Just being able to say, I pay my bills as an actor, full stop. So I'm very fortunate that I am able to do that. And I would love to be able to do that as long as possible. My husband and I, a couple years ago, bought a house that has 5 acres. We're learning how to
Ooh.
be gardening kind of people. I lived
I
in New
love
York
that.
for a really long time. So the fact that I own a tractor right now is like a very strange, like new reality. But I'm really enjoying like getting in touch with like the green thumb side of myself. We also got an RV during COVID. We were one of those like COVID RV recreation purchasers.
Love
So
it.
we've been like exploring like all of the wonderful state parks in New York and the Northeast, like near where we live. So being able to continue to have that be a part of my life, I'm really open to. My advice for anyone who's listening, if you want to be a voice actor, if this like speaks to you, take an acting class. The best thing that you can do is be a great actor and then learn about the microphone and the tech and all of the technique and all of that stuff. You're not going to make money instantly. Go learn how to be an actor first, because that will serve you really, really well. Take an acting class, take an improv class, take a stand-up comedy class, take a storytelling class, learn how to listen, and then learn how to react to what is happening, as opposed to just reading lines off a page. Because if you're just reading lines off a page, it sounds like you're reading lines off a page. And yeah, if anybody is listening to this who's disabled, look for a community. There's a great disabled community on TikTok, on Instagram. There's some great organizations that are doing a lot of really, really good work. The American Association for Disabled Persons, the 1 in 4 Coalition that I mentioned, 1in4coalition.org specifically. They basically, in America, 25% of Americans have at least one disability, whether that's a visible disability or an invisible disability. And yet less than 1% of the characters that we see in our media are disabled. And then when we do have disabled characters on screen, a lot of times they're played by able-bodied people who are faking it. So they're working really hard to advocate to have not only more disabled characters in front on your screen so that you can see yourself represented in media, but also getting more disabled people in places like development, the people who are greenlighting what's getting made, more disabled writers in the room so they can actually say, hey, guess what? This is not what a disabled experience is really like, let me tell you. So seeking out those organizations, signing up for their newsletters, supporting them, I think is really, really important. And then I would just say being authentically you. I think by me trying to hide it for a long time, that was an enormous amount of emotional labor and anxiety. And when I finally just like stopped and said, I am disabled, and like allowed that to become part of my identity, that felt like I had lifted a burden off my back, off my shoulders of trying to pass as someone who wasn't disabled. And again, I can still do many things without my disability affecting it. So I'm lucky in that way for sure. But I would say if you are finding yourself with a disability and you are really just not sure how to navigate it, I think just accepting the fact that you have a disability is a really good place to start. And know that some disabilities are not permanent. Disability is the largest minority in America, and people come in and out of it. You can become disabled because of an injury. You can recover and leave. You can become disabled as you age. So it's one of these categories that you eventually will have some kind of experience with, either for yourself or through a family member. And I think the more that we can all do to be great allies to disabled people, both in public, in our lives, whatever. If you see something, say something, all of that stuff. But just being authentically you, I think, is a great piece of advice.
Yeah, and don't be a Karen.
Don't be a Karen or a Sheila in the Target parking lot who wanted my health information.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Or
Yeah,
the people
don't
on
be that
TikTok
person.
that think they know the story and then blast you and send you comments that you should kill yourself when they have no idea what's going on, because that happens a lot. People get one side of the story and judge.
Oh,
Don't be that
And
person.
somehow those commenters are always like men with private profiles who have 34 followers, and it's like just them in a car or them in a fish in their profile picture. Who are these
And you're like,
guys?
this is, yeah, and it's like, and this is why you're single and alone, dude.
That's right. That's
Go
right.
away.
Every time I get like a troll comment like that, I always just go to my favorite standby, which is, you seem nice. And I try as hard as I can to have like the eyebrows and the sarcasm like in the text as I'm writing it. But I just send that right back out into the universe. I know some people go a little bit further, like, your mother must be proud of you. I haven't quite gotten to that level of sassiness.
Oh, I like
that's
that
a really
one. That's
good
a
retort.
one.
I like that one.
That is a good one. It's just gross. I don't understand how people can ever do that to somebody. It's just gross. Icky.
Yeah, they're just, they're able to hide behind the screen, right? They would never say that to someone in person in front of other people.
Absolutely not.
Like the social media gives you that false mask that like you're saying something into a void and nobody's actually listening. And it's like, no, you commented on someone's post and they fucking read it. So yep, you are still doing harm.
Absolutely. So is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm happy for people to reach out to me. I connect with people on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Maria Pendo. And my voiceover website is voicebymaria.com. So feel free to say hi.
Awesome. This is How to Deal when Shit Gets Real, and we will see y'all next episode.